in the business, they say, if you want to last, you need to list. And so that's what we're going to focus on today, because when the market constricts and gets tight, you got to continue, it goes back to the basics, as it always should. You got to be, out belly button to belly button, talking to people, meeting with people, shaking hands, kissing babies, contacts. So that leads to appointments. And ideally, your focus should be listings, because for every listing that you get, NAR says that you should get at least 2 sales. So you should sell your listing and get a buyer. And if you're really skilled at working it, you should probably get 3 sales out of that, especially if you're working all the social media and open houses and things of that nature. So I've got a buddy of mine that I've asked to come on, and I'll say this before I get going introducing him. He's not with EXP, right? He's with another brokerage. That's a-okay. If you have some friends and buddies at other brokerages, don't hesitate to invite them to this weekly meeting training. We are very focused on production and pouring into people and pouring into the industry. This is not just an EXP exclusive type thing. We as leaders really want to open it up to everybody. So don't be afraid to throw that invite. If you just closed an escrow with someone at Remax or Keller Williams or Compass or whatever, just say, hey, you love to learn? Are you, learning based? We got some killer coaches and trainers and topics that we cover every week. It's 30 minutes and it gets your day going right. So just wanted to put that out there and empower you all that it is a-okay to invite guests to this meeting. We even have people within EXP that are not part of our organization, but they're part of the one team, one dream of EXP that, come on because they love the value we bring. So with that being said, I have my friend Brad Knowles, and he's got 20 plus years experience in his current company. I mean, he's kind of done it all. ALC member and obviously an agent, and he's been a team leader, I think, for 15 years, 10 years at his current company. They've got like 500 agent office. So he's definitely responsible, because as a team leader, your job is to grow and attract agents and build that office. And he's done a fantastic job. I mean, they're actually the top 5 most profitable office in the country. So kudos to you, CEO of that office. That's awesome. He also is the founder of Knowles Development. It's dedicated to, and I love this, developing leaders, because everything rises and falls based on leadership, right? So that's where the rubber meets the road, is developing leaders who surpass goals and set industry standards for excellence across a range of business types. So really appreciate you, Brad, taking some time out of your busy schedule to pour into us today. I'm going to step aside. I might interject every now and then, but we're going to talk about listings and how to price them right from the beginning. And then if if the market's still going down, we didn't get you right, how do we get price reductions and some of those strategies?
I love it. Well, thanks for letting me join. Appreciate being here. And just quick background, I got into real estate 2005. So a little over 20 years, and which meant about 2 years in, I had a wonderfully rude awakening, which some of you may already be experiencing right now, that kind of shift in the market. And, I thought I was the bee's knees, because I got to a point where I was carrying 50 listings at a time. But I just wasn't selling any of them. Right. So we had to get very, very good at really understanding pricing, really understanding the fact that we might miss the market. Right now, I'm up here in little tiny Portland, Maine, and a lot of Maine, especially outside of Portland, gets rural quick. So some of you might experience that. Some of you might be super metropolitan. But we're just going to talk about 3 big buckets. 3 big buckets. Bucket number 1 is just expectations. How do we start setting better expectations when we walk into these conversations with potential sellers? Number 2, we're going to talk about data. How do we mine the data so we're doing everything we can to position the sale of the property as quickly as possible, well within the speculation time that the client has, all that good stuff. And then lastly, what if we do have to do a price reduction? What do we have to do if the property's on the market for a long time? And right now, a long time for a bunch of us probably feels like a month. Is that fair?
Although we are having in the greater Sacramento area, we have agents from all over the country here, but at least in my market, it's almost kind of doubled in days on market, if not even more than that.
Yeah. Understand that in 2008 and 2009, I was taking minimum 1-year listing agreements.
Yep.
1 year. And we were really hoping we could get it done in that year. So our average days on market had gotten well into the 200 and something days on market in the southern half of the state of Maine. So, and obviously we're not there, but for some of us, we may not have ever experienced this. If we have experienced it, it's probably a skill set that's pretty dusty. Right? Think about some tools in an actual toolbox you haven't used for a while. They're at the bottom of the freaking toolbox. You got to hit them with the WD to get them going again. That's what I'm talking about. So let's take a look at expectation conversation. And there's 3 subsections here to expectation conversation. Number 1, we have to work together. This cannot be an adversarial conversation with the seller. So one of the simple things that we do for meeting somebody in person is go from an adversarial position to a collaborative position. So picture sitting at the kitchen table, right? Mr. and Mrs. Seller are across the table from you. You're over here. You're talking about why they should work with EXP. You're talking about why they should work with your team, the reach that the team has. You're talking about why they should work with you, your unique value proposition. You're selling them on your marketing plan, all the things that you do to market the property. You're selling them on working with you. We haven't even talked price. Because here's one of the things I would say when it comes to expectation. If they're not bought in on working with you, right? Kevin, Megan, Brent, if they're not bought in on working with you, what you say about price doesn't mean shit. Mm-hmm. You're just another neighbor talking over the fence, right? It doesn't matter. Your opinion doesn't matter. It's only if they feel like, oh, you're the person who has value. Now I'll listen. I don't want health advice from my brother, right? It's the doctor who I waited 3 months to get the appointment with. And now we're finally sitting in the room and they're wearing the white jacket. And I go, please help me. And they go, you got to do this. Like, okay, I'm going to follow what you say. Right. So we got to have the credibility piece before we can even dive into it. So that's number 1. Number 2, we got to work together. So if I'm sitting across the table from them and I'm really bought in, they're buying into the fact that this is the person we want to work with. Now we just got to figure out how are we going to price the property. I'm physically going to move. If I'm adversarially across the table, I'm going to go sit at the end of the table and kind of scooch beside them so that we together can view the data, right? So we can look at this together. Let's analyze the data together. It's a small thing and it's a big thing. The other expectation piece that we need to set is we don't have a crystal ball. We don't have one. And I would ask them if they have one, because if they do, I'd love to borrow it. Okay? We don't have a crystal ball. So anything past this moment is an educated guess, right? We don't really exactly know where the market is heading. All we can look is at in the rearview mirror what's been happening and where we are today, right? That's all we can really look at. And if you think anybody's got, some pushback on that, just explain to them, what would it have looked like if I sat with you on March 1st, 2020 and acted like I knew where the world was going, and then 2 weeks later we got shut down with COVID and blah, 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 right? Obviously, it's an extreme example, but it's a great example to keep in your toolbox to go, we don't freaking know. Tomorrow is not promised. We got no idea. And we can analyze the data and get the best possible positioning of your property to cause it to sell. The last thing is to make sure we get them to verbalize. To what? Somebody unmute. To what?
Verbalize.
Yeah. Get them to say the words to the answer to this question. Who determines the value of their property?
Buyer.
The one with the money.
Close.
Well, buyer and seller, I guess.
Close. The market. The market determines the value of the property. Does the seller have a say in that? Sure. Does the buyer have a say in that? Sure. Does the agent have a say? Does the buyer's agent have a say? Does an appraiser have a say? Yes. It's the collective of all of that, which we use the moniker the market. The reason I stress that is because I do not want the seller to think that Brad Knowles determines the value of their home, because I don't.
Absolutely.
Unless I'm the freaking person writing a check to buy it, I do not determine the value of their home, and neither do you. And neither does the seller, right? The
Could I
seller
chime
doesn't
in on that
determine it
real
either.
quick?
Go, Don, go.
Well, that point that you're making right now, I think is so important. I want to emphasize it. It is so common for a seller to ask us, well, what can you sell the property for?
Yes.
Right. And what Brad is saying, and what I would emphasize is, do not tell them what you think the property will sell for. The phrase that you want to use is, right now, the market is indicating. Okay.
Yeah.
Such
This
and
isn't me.
such. And you can give them a little bit of a range, perhaps. But it is, and notice I said right now. Next month, it could be different. Okay.
It'll be different next week.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Quick story. Personal experience. Went to sell a house that I owned in Massachusetts. Yeah. Met with the agent many weeks in advance. It was an agent that I'd worked with for a long time. Stage it, fix this, move this. Great. Do all that stuff. We're going on the market like 2 days later. She hits me up. Hey, did you see that new listing that came across? Let me take a look at it. They were priced slightly more aggressively than what we were planning on pricing. And she just asked me, say, what do you think that means for our price? And I said, I think we got to drop it by $5,000. We got to come in just underneath them. Because one of the things we've got to keep in mind is when more inventory comes on the market, your listing is only going to do one of two things. It is going to help sell your listing, or it's going to help sell somebody else's listing. That's right? The price value comparison of your listing is either going to help sell your listing because it's the best deal out there, or you're going to help sell somebody else's listing, right? That's what's going to happen. All right, so let's move into data.
Well, okay, let me just chime in real quick on something in regards to the listing. So when I meet with the sellers, right, a lot of times they're not ready to go on the market in the next 3 days or whatever, right? There's, hey, we've gone through and we're going to, one of the added value we say is we're going to do a full walkthrough of the property. I might have my quote unquote staging specialist, not that I bring in staging, but we're going to use your furniture, save you some money, and we're going to either thin out, declutter, get it ready for the buyer's eye, because that's super important. And so it may be that it's 2, 3, 4 weeks before that they are ready to go live on the market, because we got to get all that completed and show ready to then get the photographer and the videographer and all that, because that's locked in stone online. So typically we're not picking a price. And I tell them, I go, you know what? Honestly, today we're not going to lock down a dead set price, because we're 3 to 4 weeks away and anything can happen in the market. There may be new listings, new sales. So what we will do is we'll go over and pick out a range where we think it should be. We'll do that together. Yes. And then we will do a market analysis the day before we go live to make sure anything in the market has changed, either positive or negative. It may be that the price we kind of determine the range today is low. In 4 weeks from now, the market's going up. Hey, maybe I can get you another $5,000. You'd like that, right? But the flip side may be true too. If the market's trending down, we don't want to have it outside the market range and we're chasing it down. So you get them where they agree with you, and it's always we, and we're doing it together. It's not Matthew that's determining this. Right. So I think that's really valuable that you brought up.
And I can't speak to your state, whatever state you're sitting in right now, but for most of New England, if I take that listing that day, the way Matt analyzed, and let's say a month later, we actually go to market, the only way I can take that listing is we do actually have to put a price in, at least in the states that I work in. I don't have a valid listing agreement unless I have a start date, an expiration date, and a price. Right?
Absolutely correct. So how I handle that?
Put that in as a placeholder.
Yes.
And set the expectation of we're going to relook at this 24 hours before we go on the market.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it. All right, data. So what are we pulling on the data front? Because last 5 years, a lot of us got lazy, right? Got a little soft around the middle when it came to pricing. Especially if you're in a state, we've got big subdivisions and there's a lot of data that you can mine. I mean, it's one of the benefits that we have here in the state of Maine. Good luck finding two freaking homes that are the same. I got comps that the year they were born are 150 years apart. And it's the best comp I have. The 1850 house, right? And the one that was built in, 2000. Right? And those are the best comps I can get my hand on. The better the data, the closer the range can be, the tighter the range can be. But you're definitely, we got a lot of different states represented here. So sometimes we can't stay in the same neighborhood. Sometimes we got to move outside that, blah, blah, blah. But let's look at 6 big categories of data that we should be mining to make sure we're pricing appropriately. Because the best way to avoid a price reduction is to get it right the first time. Obviously.
That's right.
Obviously. Yeah. So the first thing I would have you look at is expireds. Just somebody unmute quick and just tell me, why would I want to look at an expired? Why am I looking at that as a pricing tool for my upcoming listing?
Because they weren't priced right. That's why they expired.
Exactly. They just showed us what didn't work. Why the frick would we do that again? Right? So they're showing us the upper end range that we know doesn't work. We know it doesn't work, okay? So we want to look at expireds because it is going to give us that upper end range. Then we're going to dive into solds, right? We want to dive into solds. Now, many of us, this is kind of all the work we've been doing, but there's 3 little subsets in the solds that I think is just good to touch on. Obviously, comparable home style, as close to the same style as possible is what I want to be looking at. Number 2, as close as physically possible geographically. People do make a lot of their buying decisions based off of school systems. So if you can stay in the same school system, now for some of you, that might be a neighborhood within a town or within a city. For me, that could be 3 or 4 towns. 3 or 4 towns that have one shared school system. So if I'm going to go outside the town, I want to stay in the school system. Okay? A lot of the movement that happens is because of those blood-sucking leeches called children. I don't know if you happen to have any of those, leeches hanging around, but we make a lot of our decisions because of that. So school system, if I have to move outside a neighborhood or town, right, I want to do everything I can to stay in the school system. And the last one is time. I want to be as close as possible to now, right? What's sold in the last 30 days? What's sold in the last 60 days? In my area here, there's times where I got to go back to the beginning of the year. I don't like doing it, but that data is more applicable than no data, right? So I'm mining the data that I have. So we want to be looking at our solds. Then we want to be looking at our pendings, right? What's currently under agreement? And I don't know your MLS where you currently sit, but there's usually a fair number of versions of what under agreement looks like. Under agreement, active to sell, blah, 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 that kind of a thing. Don, you got a hand up. Go.
Yeah. Well, I love the focus on knowing the market and using the data. And I would just say the majority of the time that I was selling, the prices were dropping. And if after showing them all this data, they conclude that their value is higher than it should be, I would actually require them to get in the car with me and go view the comps with me.
Let's go for a ride. Now, here's the good news. I don't know if you had this experience, Don. My experience was 100% of the time when we did that. 100% of the time. Not only did they agree to a price drop or get into the range in terms of listing, they always were more aggressive than what I was recommending. Right? So if I'm coming like, geez, I really think we kind of need to be in here based off this range, and then we go for a tour, they were always coming in below what I was suggesting 100% of the time. They just can't hide from it anymore, right?
100%. I would say in my case, I wasn't quite as good as you, but I will say that 100% of the time they either reduced their price or they went off the market. But at least I didn't have to manage a overprice.
Very good. Very good. So we want to look at our pendings, right? We want to look what's currently under contract. In most MLSs, we don't know what it is priced as in terms of what it's under contract for. But here's what we do know. At that price, that property caused an offer to happen that was acceptable to the seller, right? Which is what we're trying to do with our own client, right? We're trying to position the property so that we get offers that are acceptable to the seller. Now, a big thing that we need to start doing, if we're not already doing it, your best pending comps. Reach out to the listing agents on those comps. Reach out to them. Ask them questions. Now, unless somebody unmutes and tells me otherwise, every realtor board I've ever worked in, I can ask all the questions. They can't necessarily answer them, but I can ask them. Okay. Yep. So I want to ask, hey, what was the activity like on that before it went under? Did you get multiple offers? Are you willing to share that? Is there anything else that you could share about the current under contract that wouldn't violate the confidentiality, right? So I want to try to probe and get as much information as I can about those pendings, because we're getting closer and closer to now, right? Solds are in the way back rear view, right? The pending, especially people in California, you get this, that's that freaking person tailgating me, right? That's that traffic jerk right on my butt, right? Now, how do I get into the car, just to continue the metaphor? What's currently on the market? What's currently on the market, and where do we need to position our price so that we are the best value? Compared to what we're up against, how do we position so that we're the best value? That to me is one of the critical things that we need to do. And that might be, like what Don said, hey, let's go for a couple of drives quick. Let's check out the neighborhood for that one that's a really close competitor. Even if your seller's not doing it with you, you should be that knowledgeable. Which also, as a total sidebar, is one of the reasons why I tell people, like, you cannot service all markets in your state. Now, California, it's easy to see that, right? Colorado, it's easy to see that. But I work with people in Rhode Island. I mean, you go from one side of Rhode Island to the other. And even in Rhode Island, coastal Rhode Island compared to central, compared to rural, those are totally different markets. You can't possibly know all the data you need to know to really service them at a high level. So you got to pick your market and become very knowledgeable there. And it really shows up when you start looking at the currents and the competition and price positioning. Last thing, you should know the broader market trend. Because if you know the trajectory that it has been on, that's the best ... that we can extend out to give us an idea of what the future looks like, right? So if we've passed the peak and we're starting to see increased days on market, increased inventory, starting to see increase in price reduction, if you're in that market situation, we can ... out. What does it look like in a month? Going back to Matt's metaphor, right? What does that look like a month from now? Do we think we can be as aggressive as the current pricing? Might we need to be slightly below that? Any questions on that before we move on? I got one more bucket to talk about, and then I'll get out of your hair, or we can do a little Q&A.
Oh, Brad, this is so good. I just want to say, you guys, I saw a stat. Of course, it was on Facebook, so don't take this as the gospel, okay? But there has never been a time in history, according to this graph, or I'll say, let's say for sure since 2016, but that the sellers now outnumber the buyers by more than 500,000. There apparently, according to this stat, there's 1,943,669 sellers, 1.45 buyers. So what does that tell you about the trend of the market right now?
Yeah. And this is a great time to talk, those are national stats. A lot of that data, I believe, came from Redfin, because they were able to kind of project out based off the data they have in terms of the number of possible buyers. I think it's absolutely in the ballpark, right? We've gone through that. We've gone over that tipping point nationally, but depending on where you are in Colorado, depending where you are, in the United States, you might not be feeling that, right? And so you might have the tendency to look at this phone call and go, dude, this is a waste of time. They're not talking about me. That's not my market. Everything's going multiple offer. What the frick? Why are you wasting my time, Matt? Here's why. because it always starts in the Sun Belt and it moves across the country. And the Sun Belt is already there.
Yep.
California is already there. Texas is already there. Arizona is already there. Florida is already there.
Big
So
time.
even if you aren't experiencing it yet, this is your next market. It's your next market. So when do you want to prepare? 30 days after you figure it out, or 6 months before?
Yeah.
Right? All right. Let's dive into just price reduction. A couple of quick things to keep in mind. And I'm happy to hang out and answer any questions or talk about stuff. Number one, I think the best thing you can do with a price reduction is pre-sign. You take your price reduction sheet, right? And you say, hey, if we're on the market X number of days and we haven't got that offer, we're not seeing the showings, it's going to tell us that we need to do a price reduction. And we also know that a price reduction of $100 doesn't mean crap, right? So this is a percentage change price reduction. Some bit of rule of thumb, but again, different price brackets really matter. Different types of properties really matter. But if you aren't even causing the showings to happen, you're off by at least 5%.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to talk about. You're off. And there are certain markets where you could easily argue that you're more like 10% off. If you're getting showings, but you're not getting offers, you're off by multiple percentage points, depending on the type of property. In a lot of markets, you already know this within 2 weeks. You already know within 2 weeks. With some, we got a big luxury market here in the state of Maine. Everybody wants to own a piece of the Rocky Coast of Maine, right? Everybody and their mother wants to own a piece of that. So that is high valued real estate. And when you talk 5, 6, 7 million for a property in the state of Maine, it's still going to take a little while to move. So what might be something that I could look at in a 2-week time frame in downtown Portland, Maine, coastal up in Damariscotta, I might have to look at that through like a 45-day window. So you got to use your judgment and discernment on that. But a pre-signed, pre-dated, pre-priced price reduction is the best way to go. So let's just go through a scenario. You price something at X. You're figuring within 30 days, we're going to know. And as the agent, within 2 weeks, we missed.
Yeah.
Right? There's an old Floyd Wickman expression, for any of you who've been around that long. It's an old Floyd Wickman expression. Write it down. It's not super complicated. When you know that you know that you know. When you know that you know that you know. At that moment, your job as a fiduciary is to lower the price. That's your job, right? So if I'm sitting on a 30-day price reduction and I already know at day 14, that's a phone call I'm making to my seller. Hey, activity hasn't been what we thought. We've got that price reduction keyed up. What do you think about putting that in now? What if we change it, put it in now? We've got the new price leading into the open house this weekend, blah, blah, blah. Okay? They're more likely to do it quicker when they've already committed to, we know this is where we're going anyway. Okay? So having a pre-signed one can really help.
Hey, Brad, real quick on that note, when you clearly communicate your value, this kind of ties into what Don put in the chat as well, and you're able to communicate your marketing plan, your marketing system, and so on, it can be easier to go get that price reduction if it needs to be earlier. In your example, it's a month pre-written, but now it's like, hey, 2 weeks. You dropped a little nugget there that maybe they missed. You're doing an open house that weekend. You're doing XYZ marketing, that weekend, making a push on social media, whatever it is. You can leverage that as the aspect of, hey, let's get the new adjusted price, right? It's not a price reduction. It's an adjustment based on the market. And let's get that locked in so that we can leverage that through the marketing push we're doing this weekend. It's pretty tough for a seller to go, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, let's waste more time.
They're going to go, that makes sense. That I can get behind. That makes sense, right?
Right. Yep. So last couple of things. One, let's say you did that. Let's say you did everything right. But the market's shifting. It's shifting faster than we thought, right? Price improvement. Yes, Tom, thank you. And we did the pre-signed. We made the adjustment. Still don't have the action we need. What you got to realize is as a market shifts hard, You're going to want to be reaching out to your seller weekly, but you're going to want to have a pricing conversation every 21 to 30 days. Mm-hmm. So whatever system you're using, that's your reminder system about what it looks like when you're on the market with them, right? You're going to want to have a tickler in there that says, hey, at day 20, rerun the CMA. At day 23, call the seller to rebook a call with them. And by day 30, we'll have had that meeting. The other little nugget I want to just share here with this. Please, 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 either do that on Zoom or do that in person. I'll give you 3 percentages here. These are ish numbers, but write them down because it helps drive the point home. 7% of communication is the words we use. If I email you, I've limited my ability to communicate with you down to 7% of the total. Do you think I've opened the door for miscommunication? You sure as heck have. And do you think a price reduction conversation is one that is full of anxiety and stress for your seller? Yes, it is. So we've got this very anxious situation, and I'm throwing out an email to you. Nope. If we just get on Zoom, we have improved another 36%. Because though you don't really get my facial expression and that kind of stuff, you at least start to get my tonality, my inflection. But more importantly, I get it from you. I can hear that you're nervous. I can hear that you're stressed. I can hear that you're frustrated. Those are very hard things to hear in an email. Follow? And if you do hear it in an email, you're in trouble. Right? That means you should have had that conversation and instead you did the email and now you're seeing it because it's all caps. Yay! Isn't that fun? But ideally we do this in person because 55% of communication is facial expression and body language. They say they're fine, but they're not. And you know that because what their face is telling you, what they're jittery, they're nervous, their arms are crossed, right? You're getting totally different information than what's coming out of their mouth. This is your opportunity to kind of win them over, handle the emotional move. We're helping them handle a physical move. But when I show up to have this price reduction conversation, price improvement, thank you, Tom. When I show up to have the price improvement conversation, what I really want to do is make sure that I'm handling the emotional move. Okay? Because that's where I'm actually going to earn the referrals in the future. Right? I'm going to earn their future reference this by handling that emotional move. Okay? The last thing I would say is, let's say we're 4 or 5 months in. Sucker still hasn't sold. Sellers digging their feet in. One last technique to get the price right. You walk into the house, you have 2 pieces of paper printed. Yes, I said paper. Yes, I said printed. I'm aging myself. Okay. I come in with 2 pieces of paper. We're doing one of them. They're already pre-signed, pre-dated by me. 1, price reduction to where the price needs to be. 2, termination of listing agreement. We are not going to continue on the path we are on. We are going to make a decision one way or the other. And as a fiduciary, I'm totally fine either way. I want what's best for them. So like Don had referenced before, if they're not okay with it, great. Then yes, we should take it off the market. If they don't want to take it off the market, there isn't another option. This is the option. We need to reduce the price to this. Now we know what the market is telling us. This is what must happen now. Okay? And yes, it can be painful. And yes, those are hard conversations. But that's why we're talking about it now. Talk about it now. Not when you're 3 minutes before pulling up to their front door, right? All right. I've gone on and on and on. I think we've gone over, but I'm happy to hang out for a little bit longer.
There is a question, but go ahead, Don.
Yeah. Well, what Brad just said there about the termination, back in the day, I got most of my business, early 90s, from expireds. And I cannot tell you the number of times that the seller told me that the agent just stopped communicating with them. And so what happened was that, of course, the seller was overpriced, right? Mm-hmm. And the agent, appropriately so, told them so. Mm-hmm. And the seller did not reduce their price. Okay. But because the agent got frustrated and stopped communicating with them, over their dead body, were they going to give that price reduction to that agent?
Yeah. Okay. People start digging the heels in, right? They start digging the heels in.
Yep. Yeah. And they told 11 people on average that agent sucks because they don't communicate. Okay. And then they promptly relisted their property at a lower price with me.
Yep. And sold it.
Okay.
Yep.
So if what Brad is saying is that if they won't give you the price reduction and the market is trending down, you've got to rescind that listing because you're not going to be proactive and you're not going to spend any money on the property. You're not going to want to talk to them. Okay. So the moment that you in your mind say, okay, I'm just going to let this ride out, you're screwed. You can't do that.
Yeah. And to your point, Don, every day that my sign is up in front of that property and it's not selling, I'm communicating to the entire neighborhood. Everybody who passes that sign, I'm communicating, I don't know how to sell real estate. That's what I'm telling everybody who passes the sign. So it's only your reputation, your business, all of that stuff that's on the line. No big deal.
No big deal. Yeah.
Right.
By the way, Brad, I think you might have a second calling after you step down for what is arguably the hardest role in the real estate world, team leader. I think you might want to try stand-up comedy.
I appreciate that. Yes, I find that with adult learners, yes, that's everybody on here, we have to get people out of autopilot, right? And just take this little nugget because you guys all present all the time, right? Mm-hmm. The reality is 95% of the time people walking around are on autopilot. Yeah, I get it, move on. Yeah, I get it, move on. So how the hell do we break them out of it? Well, if you can get somebody to laugh, they're present. They are present. And now I can convey something they'll actually hear, right? So, yeah, I think it's a great technique. Weave a little humor in, weave a little this, that kind of thing. One of my techniques, coming back to this, is when somebody says, let's say their house should list at $850, and they want that $1 million. My approach, again, similar conversation, my approach is, Don, if we're going to list it for $1 million, we might as well list it for $2 million. Because either way, we're not going to get it. You do something like that, it's a pattern interrupt for them. It shakes their freaking world because it doesn't fit through the normal filter. And they go, wait a minute, what? Like, yeah, dude, you're so far out of the market. Fuck it. List it for $2 million. What diff? It's not going to go anywhere. Now I've got them listed.
Leave out that one part.
Well, no. See, I'm in New England.
Yeah.
Right, in New England, like F is a comma, right? So
it's kind of true.
Yeah. Yes, sad.
You guys in New England do not suffer fools.
Brad, no, we don't.
You have been fantastic. Great message. Very timely.
I'm happy to do it.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, we do have one question.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
You put your cell phone in the chat. That's great. But Marion had a question. When do you bring up seller concessions in this interest rate sensitive environment? Now that, the buyer's broker needs to negotiate their own commissions and from the buyer and blah, 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 and having the conversation of seller contribution or concessions.
That's a minefield to talk on with multiple brokerages in multiple states on a call that's being recorded. So I'll preface everything through that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will also say, honestly, I think it is a case-by-case basis. And if I was sitting with the seller today, I would personally make it offer specific. Right? That is my personal approach. That's not my brokerage's approach or anything like that. But my personal approach is, if Marianne brought me an offer that was an offer that was very acceptable to my seller while also asking to be compensated by the seller, I would do a net sheet with the seller and I'd be talking about the net. Is that net something that you're happy with? Who cares who's getting the rest of the money? Who are you happy with the net? And if the answer is yes, then we should be excited about paying Marianne. If we're not happy with the net, the concession is one problem of 7 problems, right? So to me, it's a deal with the whole, and the whole is always specific to the offer.
Cool.
Yeah.
Way to navigate that minefield, Brad.
Yeah, exactly. Now I will take my tap shoes off.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Great job.
Yeah, no, but my contact information's in there. I do own a coaching and training company. I was just out of state yesterday teaching stuff, and it's what I love to do. It's the thing that keeps giving me energy in this role that is a little bit challenging. So yeah, if anybody needs help with anything on any front, I'm broker agnostic with my coaching and training company. So happy to be of service or just answer some questions. That's what I'm here for.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, and really appreciate it. This is recorded, so it's posted at different places. Our Facebook group, you can find it there. You can find it on my YouTube channel. I think Coach Randy Bird puts it on his YouTube channel. So there's multiple places you can find it.
Right.
Either Don or Tom, do you have anything that you'd like to add, or maybe do we know next week's guest or something of that nature?
Yes.
Well, yeah, so go ahead, Don.
Hold on, Tom. I'm up next week, and I have a special request for you guys. We're going to share with you how to build a $500,000 book of referral business. We have a really unique situation in our market right now. In addition to the market trending down from a value perspective, 25% of the agents out there are 65 or over. Mm-hmm. The average age is 55. The market is tough, and there's a lot of people looking for the exit. I'm going to show you how to acquire a book of referral business and build up your personal practice to $500,000 and then sell it for that. Now, to make this job really easy for you, I have a unique request, and that is I want you to invite your title rep and your loan officer to next week's meeting. I did a meeting yesterday with a title rep in San Diego with Chicago Title. And she had come to our training on how to buy a book of business. So she was familiar with the concept. And I did a Zoom with her and Deanne Dillard yesterday. And I can tell you the average title rep knows 2 to 3 people that want to sell their business right now. The Chicago rep that we met with yesterday is introducing on Friday Deanne Dillard on when they do their broker tour to an agent that is 77, okay, and doing over 500,000 and wants to retire. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is no small opportunity, you guys. Bring your title rep, bring your loan officer, because they have a huge vested interest seeing you acquire that book of business.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's quite a system, you guys. You don't want to miss it. So, and then Tom Daves.
All right. Well, thank you, Brad, Matt, Don. This was amazing. I love it. We need to embrace discomfort. John Maxwell says anything you want and need is just beyond your comfort level. And so this is uncomfortable to have these conversations with our clients. But like Brad says, us as a fiduciary, it's our freaking job. So now y'all got your inspiration. Time to put in a perspiration. Thanks, guys.
There it is.
We'll see you next week.
Let's go. All right, you guys. God bless you. Have an amazing day. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.